We got some great news regarding the next-gen Xbox. The amount of Xbox games going to PlayStation is unbelievable. Let's discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly about Avowed. What is up, y'all? I am Ray, and this is my channel, Xbox Ready, where we get on and we talk about Xbox stuff. The latest news, rumors, games, accessories, pretty much anything I want to talk about as long as it's about Xbox in some way. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about some important news regarding the next generation of Xbox consoles, a shocking revelation about Xbox first-party games showing up on PlayStation, and then we'll wrap up the video discussing Obsidian's highly anticipated fantasy RPG, Avowed. Now, just last week, we quietly got a very important update in regards to the next generation of Xbox consoles. There's been a lot of back and forth whether or not Xbox was going to even bother making hardware anymore, especially now that they're pushing their games onto other platforms. And while Xbox leadership has been telling us straight out, we are going to have Xbox consoles, we're going to support hardware going forward, it's an important part of our strategy, some people have found it hard to believe them, hard to take their words at face value. Let's be real, Xbox leadership, sometimes they have a tendency to say one thing and then a couple of months later, backtrack on it or pivot. So even though Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, Matt Booty, they've been saying that Xbox consoles are going to stick around, not everyone really believed that in their hearts, especially given everything we know about Microsoft losing money on Xbox consoles, the staggering amount it takes to just invest in making hardware in general, in the hopes that people will buy enough Xbox games or enough people will sign up for Game Pass to justify that cost. For anyone who's still doubtful that there is going to be a next-gen Xbox, Windows Central Jez Corden revealed a very important milestone for just that. He claims to have been told that the next-gen Xboxes have now moved past its early pitch stages and has been fully approved and costed all the way up the chain. He goes on and adds not to expect a reveal for the next-gen Xbox anytime soon. But just because we're not going to be getting a reveal anytime soon doesn't mean people aren't going to wildly speculate on it. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it's looking like for at least the next 10 years, at least the next generation, we are going to have an Xbox console. Now, the prevailing theories about what we're going to see from Microsoft next generation is we're going to get some sort of Series X2 that is sort of like a console, but sort of like a PC. It'll have multiple launchers. That is all just stemming from rumor and stuff that Phil Spencer has said in the past. But given Xbox's cloud and PC ambitions, I don't think it's that far of a stretch to say that they're going to implement that into their next generation console. There's already hardware and devices out there that bundles together multiple launchers, the Xbox launcher, Steam, freaking Battle.net, Epic Games. For example, my ROG Ally, if you hit the Armory Crate button, it brings up all of your games across all of the launchers, and then you can go into specific launchers if you really wanted to. Given Microsoft's experience with Windows and just PC gaming in general, I don't think it would be super hard for them to do that on an Xbox console. That is, assuming they can get the PC versions of their game running on whatever this next-gen machine is. The other theory is that Xbox is working on a handheld. It's not really a theory because they have confirmed that they're working on it. We know that there are prototypes for this thing out there, but just because there's a prototype of something doesn't mean it's a lock. There was a prototype of the all-streaming digital Xbox Project Keystone. It even appeared on Phil Spencer's shelf, but ultimately they scrapped that. They were like, no, this thing is dumb. We're not going to do it. I don't think that's going to happen with the handheld because it seems like something that Xbox, that's particularly Phil Spencer, is really excited about, but I wouldn't call it a lock just yet. The one question on a lot of people's minds is, what's the point of an Xbox console? Whether it's handheld, whether it can, launch Steam or Epic Games on it. In a world where Xbox is putting all of their games on PlayStation, on Switch, giving them away like candy, what's the point of buying an Xbox console? And that, my friend, is a very good question. If you ask Phil Spencer, he is of the idea that the hardware is going to be the differentiator, the reason why you're going to buy a next-gen Xbox versus the exclusive games, but we don't know what that hardware differentiator is. While some people seem to be down with this whole multi-platform approach, I see some people online, on Reddit, on Twitter that aren't. People who are saying, I'm done with Xbox after this generation, I'm going PS6 next gen. It's gotten to the point where Ryan McCaffrey tweeted this, and it really got me thinking. He says, Microsoft might legit publish more games on PS5 this year than Sony does. Which, after watching that state of play, might be true. Like, in between bringing over Forza Horizon 5 and all Indiana Jones, all of these other games, possibly the Halo Master Chief Collection or Gears of War Ultimate Edition. Compare that to PlayStation in terms of their first party, they've pretty much done nothing. And it just shows how much of a chokehold PlayStation 5 has in terms of brand recognition, in terms of community goodwill in the gaming industry amongst its customers. It has me thinking about a bunch of what ifs, because PlayStation 5, they started pretty strong in terms of their exclusives, and as the years have gone on, not so much. And it has me thinking, well, if Xbox, if they just were a little bit more prepared at the start of this generation, if they launched the Xbox Series X and S with the exclusives that we're starting to see now with Avowed, Indiana Jones, South of Midnight coming up, all those other games, would things be different? I guess we'll never know at this point, because Microsoft is hard pivoting into multi-platform, into PC, which honestly seems to be like the right move. It may not be the move that people like, but it does seem like it's the right move. PC gaming is growing at a rate that console gaming is not. And if you're a company like Microsoft, you're heading towards what is growing, not what's remaining stagnant. A lot of people have chimed in on this. Fans, content creators, executives. Mikey Barra has chimed in on this. He says, while it took a while for Microsoft to get clear on its position, that Xbox has now, or more or less, they're clear, and they say they're committed to supporting multiple platforms, getting their games out to as many places and gamers as possible. He says, I love that their games are on PC and PS5. I get that loyal Xbox gamers are mad, but that isn't going to change anything. Who cares what these Xbox loyalists do? We're about the money, not the Xbox loyalists. He continues, embrace and move on. Play on what you enjoy playing. If you're a console-only person, that probably means PS or Nintendo in the future, but you'll still have Xbox games there. He even advocates for PlayStation and Switch to put their games onto Xbox, which that's just not gonna happen. As with all things, I think there are benefits and I think there are cons to this. I am worried about the future of Xbox consoles past next generation. I think it's a pretty reasonable fear to, assume, well, if less and less people buy Xbox consoles, that's a smaller slice of the pie in terms of Xbox's overall gaming revenue. And if that pie keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, will there be a moment where Microsoft says, you know what, just cut the consoles, let's distribute our games on PC, PlayStation, Switch. We might take a hit in terms of the revenue gained on PlayStation and Switch, but it's still revenue, and it still outweighs what we would have paid trying to acquire customers with making a console and selling it to them. I'm excited for new Xbox hardware. No matter what they do, it's going to be radically different from anything we've seen from them up until this point. If we're just looking at console sales, Xbox, they're up against the ropes. I want them to get weird. I want them to make big swings. If it's going to be the last Xbox that we ever see from Microsoft, I want it to be wacky, out there, weird, cool features that we've never seen before. What do they have to lose after 2 straight generations being outsold by PlayStation 2-1? Even more than that this gen. But let's end the video talking not about what is to come to past, but the present, what we actually have here in this moment in February 2025 Xbox. Shoot, that was gonna be a really good take, dang it. My whole point was, let's talk about Avowed. Now, some of you may have been playing Avowed already if you bought the premium edition or upgraded through Game Pass Ultimate. Some of you might have just jumped in when it launched to everyone else on February 18th. Xbox sent me a code for Avowed, so as always, I'm very thankful for my friends at Xbox. I didn't get it for the review period, I got it for the early access, and I'm really liking it. I enjoy it. Inevitably, what happens with these Xbox first-party titles, true blue Xbox first-party games, is that there's a lot of pressure on them. Every game that Xbox Game Studios publishes, it's looked at as like, oh, this is make or break for Xbox. If it flops, Xbox is dead. If it's anything less than perfect, it's a flop, which is a shame same, but I kind of understand given Xbox's first-party output over the first couple of years of this current console generation. And especially Avowed, it is the first of this big wave of first-party games that we're going to be getting as fans in 2025. And when you go first, there's obviously a lot of pressure. The discourse about this game, I see it's quite divisive. There are some people who really like it. There are some people that are like, this is mid, this does not meet expectations. Oh, this exceeds my expectations. And all in the background of that, there's another question of, oh, is Avowed gonna be on PS5? The last time I heard about that at Gamescom was that they were not working on a PlayStation 5 version. A lot has changed since then, so I'm operating under the assumption that eventually there will be a PlayStation 5 version of this game, especially since there's gonna be a PS5 version of The Outer Worlds 2. But let's talk about the game itself. Let's start off with what I liked. Now, going into Avowed, I had a certain familiarity with the game world and the lore. I played the first Pillars of Eternity game. It is a vastly different style of game than Avowed is, but it's set in the same universe. And I think Obsidian did a really good job of giving us a fun world to explore. Whoever's idea it was to put parkour mechanics in a fantasy RPG, you're a genius. I love climbing on stuff, jumping over gaps, using my little axe to freeze the water in order to get across a lake or a river. There are a lot of interesting traversal mechanics in this. If you go and try to climb across a canopy, it'll wiggle a little bit and then tear open because it can't support the weight of a human. Those details make this world really fun to just walk around and experience. The combat is super fun too. I know a lot of people were drawing comparisons between this and Skyrim, but now I'm thinking I want a lot of these mechanics in the next Elder Scrolls game, Elder Scrolls 6. The ability to dash, parry, switch your weapon loadouts. It's really fun, it's super smooth. It's funner to play than I think it is to watch, because yeah, the animations when you hit someone, they can be a little jerky, especially when you kill someone and they ragdoll and kind of freak out. But when you're in it, it's really fun. When I played this game a couple months back, I think it was in October or maybe September, I wasn't a huge fan of the combat, especially the melee stuff, but I was being dropped in at like level 10-ish or something. I wasn't fully aware of all the mechanics like I am now, experience it from ground zero. I can see how people could be disappointed if they were going into this expecting an Elder Scrolls-like game. There are times when Avowed takes itself seriously as an RPG, and there are times when it doesn't. Overall, I feel as though Avowed is very gamified, if that makes sense. I know a lot of you are sitting there like, duh, Ray, it feels like a game. It's a video game. But no, I'm talking about like the damage numbers that pop up, the way that time kind of slows down to give you that parry window. I'm talking how things glimmer and kind of make that, what's that audio where it's like a shining, like something shiny is nearby. Lots of gamified elements that are meant to kind of maximize that dopamine rush that you would get in like a Diablo, picking up loot or clearing out a dungeon, like in just a standard dungeon crawler RPG action type game. I thought at first that would be annoying, but it's kind of grown on me. Here's what I don't like about this game. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, oh, Ray is gonna dog on the story and the companions and the dialogue like every other reviewer and YouTuber. I was seeing people's reviews and I was like, I was going into this when I booted up Avowed that the story and everything about the dialogue and stuff was gonna be just butt cheeks. I'm only about 10 hours in, so I can't speak definitively about the story as a whole. I don't think it's that bad. And there are still moments in this game, like in other Obsidian games, when I'm already seeing potential for replayability. Like there's a moment when the mysterious voice inside your head is like, I can either give you this healing power or you can refuse. I refuse, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not gonna give you the power, you're gonna get this other ability. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Seeing the consequences of my actions. Like I killed a guy when I could have let him live, and later on his friends caught me outside the city, the starting city, and they were like, as you travel in this game, we're gonna be looking for you. We're gonna be trying to bring you down. We're gonna try to run it back, get it back in blood. Like any good RPG, I can see how my choices are already affecting the story and the setting, and that's very cool. I think the major problem that Avowed has is the story, the information about the world, it's not conveyed in a very interesting way. I don't think the voice acting performances are super strong, and I don't think the script is doing them any favors. Every time I talk to a new NPC, I'm like, you're dumping a lot of like lore on me and like information about this world. This is just not how people talk, even in a fantasy setting. I'm not really interested in the companions that I have so far. They're just kind of dudes that are there. And I've run into certain characters where I'm like, I just don't really believe you. If that makes sense. Like early on in the game, you run into this captain of the guard or whatever, and she's like, oh, I'm this rough and tumble captain. I love to fight. And I'm like, I just don't really believe you. Like, I feel like you don't have the voice for this. I feel like the character design doesn't convey you as like this tough captain of the guard that strikes fear into the hearts of her men that she leads. I'm just not believing it. And there's like a lot of mismatches when it comes to character presentation in this. I'm also not a big fan of this gear system that they got going on. It seems that progression in this game is tied directly to whether or not you upgrade your equipment. And you're probably sitting there like, Ray, duh, yeah, that's how it is in every game. Your precious Elden Ring, you gotta go and take your sword and your gear, collect smithing stones, somber smithing stones, and get to work on that if you want any chance to defeating some of the endgame bosses. And that's true, but it seems especially egregious in Avowed because the enemies are tiered into common, fine, and whatever tiers that they have for your gear and armor. And if your gear doesn't match those enemies, they're gonna do a lot of damage to you and be super resistant to whatever weapon that you have. I was only like 2 hours in and was already running into enemies that my weapons would do nothing against. And every time that happens, one of your companions, right now it's Kai for me, says, oh, that weapon, it's crap, you gotta replace it, or you need to work on your armor. I'm like, I've just been playing this game for 2 hours and I already gotta upgrade my equipment. It's to the point where it's like, well, I like this set of armor better, and even though it gives me more damage reduction over this other set of armor that I have, it's not fine quality, so I'm really not getting that damage reduction. And upgrading things, even at the lowest level, is not cheap. It took a bunch of iron chunks in order to upgrade my little axe or any weapon. It took a lot of pelt to upgrade my breastplate that I have going on here. I'm not a huge fan of this gear progression, gear upgrade system. But damn it, when it works, when you buy into the system and you go back and you beat the absolute crap out of the thing that was kicking your ass, or if you manage to beat these high-level enemies that you're not supposed to beat through just sheer grit and willpower. I definitely did that a bunch too. Overall, I think Avowed is worth checking out. I think it's fun. I've seen a lot of people like Mr. Matty Play say, it's a good game, not great. I was expecting excellence. And that's fair. That's fair. But just looking at Obsidian's track record, I think it's right around like par for the course for them. They're a smaller studio that punches above their weight. And while, yeah, the story isn't like a home run Oscar winner, there are a lot of games like that. Games that are fun but don't really have a great story. A couple of years ago when I played Final Fantasy 16 on the PlayStation 5, I was super excited about it. In the first third of that game, I was really into the story. Last 2/3, I was hitting skip. I was not into the story. I was not into these characters. The side quests meant nothing. I understand I was probably in the minority for that. I stayed for the combat and the boss fights. And no one had anything to say about it back then. Everyone was like, oh, game of the year snub. This is crap. This game is a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I'm willing to give Obsidian a little slack here, and I would personally still recommend to check it out, especially if you have Game Pass Ultimate. Anyways, guys, that's all the Xbox stuff I have to talk about today. Thanks so much for joining me for another edition of Xbox Ready. If you made it this far into the video, consider subscribing. Help me on my journey to 200,000 subs. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.